Okay, everybody, this is Mark Zweig, and we're back with another episode of Big Talk About Small Business. That's how my partner, Eric Howerton, he's not here with us today.
That was good, though, Mark. That was a good intro.
He loves to say it like that. But I've got one of my favorite business people here with me today. Someone I can't say enough good about. Every time I talk with him, I learn something new, and I have a tremendous respect for this guy. And his name is Matt Lewis of Lewis Automotive Group here in Fayetteville. And Matt is the vice president and basically runs the show for Lewis, which is a big, big company. I mean, tell everybody a little bit about the business, if you would, Matt.
You bet. And it's more than just, you and I have had this conversation, but it's more than just selling cars.
Absolutely.
Since we've moved, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but since we've moved, our scale of employee level, we're right now sitting just below 240. I think it was 237 as far as employees go.
It's a big payroll, brother.
It is. It's kind of like there could be a big reward there, but you also have a big responsibilly.
Yeah.
So our business is scaling and it's exciting. It's put us in some challenging areas as well, which is good. Every once in a while you got to get a little uncomfortable.
You push yourself. Between your athletic pursuits and your business pursuits, you are a guy who's constantly going for more. And I love that about you.
No, I would agree with that. I would agree. That's the drive there for sure.
So this new facility you have is fantastic. It's the coolest car dealership I've ever been in, and it just looks so great. And what a great customer experience you can provide over there now.
Yeah, it's really neat. The amount of research that went into first employee centric, so then we can have a better customer. As far
You're big
as
on that internal customer.
The internal customer. If you don't take care of that employee first, how do you expect them to take care of your external customer, which is your actual customer? Right. So a lot of that went into, when we were looking at what do we do with the buildings, what does the size look like, so on and so forth. Like we've got to keep it centered that we make these areas and these places for employees to thrive. And then we wanted to make sure any of the processes, can we bake them into the actual structure of the building? To make it automatic.
Very cool.
So we found so far with that, we can take somebody that's new to the business and really do a leap on where they're at about 6 months. So we closed the gap
up to speed faster.
Months. Up to speed a whole lot faster. Especially in service.
Sure.
If you come into service, you'll notice our service drive. The customers have to pull in the service drive. And then where the service drive is, it's an entire glass wall. That they see the customer pulling in, they've got to take action there. Yep. Those are just a couple of things that I know we'll get into each of those pieces. But man, I'm really excited to be on this show and just talk business. It's fun anytime. We can just sit down and talk about what's going on in Northwest Arkansas. How are we progressing business-wise? And I always gain something, too, every time you and I talk.
Well, you're such a leader. You're somebody I see as not just a good manager, because you're also a really good manager. And as you said before, you can't forget that manage is in the word manager. That's right. So you've got to manage, but you're a great leader because, I've watched you. I mean, you move around. You are a classic management by wandering around.
No.
That was a term coined by the Tom Peters, who's probably one of the greatest management consultants ever. Mm-hmm. You move around constantly. You've done every single job in this place. That was part of your sort of training that you went through initially. Mm-hmm. And you know what's going on. People see you. They see you working. Mm-hmm. And then, your philosophy of helping your people is as opposed to sort of the draconian whip cracking.
I think that's key. And I think, I've stole this from John Maxwell a long time ago, and he's got a famous quote. It says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And one of the biggest ways to do that is show them how you're invested on making them successful. So when I talk to my managers, that their role is to manage activities, no matter the department. You could take any department out there, and a manager's job is to manage the activities of their employees. And the better job they do managing that, and a piece of it is How can I jump in the middle of it and fill a gap? Maybe we're backed up in an area in our business. Maybe it's getting the car washed. Maybe it's processing the paperwork. How can they fill that gap to keep it going efficiently? Because, the last thing is we don't want the customer to have to sacrifice not having a great experience. Maybe because we've got an employee that's off or they're on vacation.
Sure.
We got to fill that gap to make that a seamless process and a top-level customer experience.
Well, you said something very interesting, and the subtlety of it wasn't lost on me, and that is managing the activities versus the results. Because you get the results if you do the activities, right?
You really do. And if we were talking sports analogies too, they're focusing on positive yardage.
Yeah,
they're focusing on the time of possession, and the scoreboard is just a reflection of those activities.
Yes.
And it's you and I discussed this. It's not been too long ago when we talked about spiffs, ways of incentives for employees.
Yep.
And if you sit down with me and a manager comes to me and say, "Hey, Matt, I want to run an incentive or a spiff for our employees," I was like, "Great, let's talk about what you'd like to do." And usually they always focus on the results.
Yep.
So they're like, in our business, how many cars did you sell? How many sets of tires did you sell? How many engines did you sell today? And I said, you got to think about it deeper than that, because what happened, what activity happened to drive that sell? And it is usually in our business, it would be appointments or phone calls or text messages.
That's classic sales management training, but so many people don't understand that. Where did you learn that?
Until you have the chance of stepping back and learning from others. There's a really successful sales automotive trainer, and he's been around for decades. His name's Joe Verdi. So Joe Verdi really focuses on the numbers.
Yeah.
And he says, show me the numbers. Show me the phone calls. Show me the lot of.
That's the way I was trained. When I got out of grad school in 1980, the guy I worked for was a former Xerox national sales manager.
Okay.
It was all in the numbers.
It is.
How many calls did you make? How many people did you talk to? How many proposals did you send out?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is.
If your numbers were okay, then they weren't worried about you because they knew the results would bear out. You
hit on something key there. And too many people at the end of the day, when we're doing a recap, they'll be disappointed because they didn't sell a car or they didn't sell as much on the service drive as they wanted. I said, but show me your activities.
Yep.
And they said, well, I made 100 phone calls today. I sent out 50 videos.
They're going to make it, right?
And I'm like, great job. And they're kind of looking at me weird, like, what do you mean, great job, Matt? I didn't sell a car today. I didn't hit my quota in service. And I said, you keep doing that, and we'll have the big successful days. In fact, when we have a big day, in our business, selling cars, what's called a hat trick is if you sell 3 cars in a day.
Sure.
And I say, show me 3 or 4 days before then. Show me their activity level, and I'll tell you how that happened.
Yep.
Because I always ask them, like, well, how'd you have a hat trick? How'd you sell 3 cars in a day? They're like, oh, I don't know. Well, I know. Start peeling back. Pull the logs on the phone calls, on the emails sent, on all the social media posts. But too many people miss that.
Yes.
So then here's what happens is they have a hat trick. They sell 3 cars, and then the next day they just fall on their face.
Right.
And they're like, well, what happened? What changed? I wore the same clothes. I had the same attitude. I did the same this and that.
My special socks. I had them.
And I'll say, let me tell you what happened. You forgot to do the daily activities. Mm-hmm. And we use the word daily there. It's not like, hey, one day a week win. It's compounding.
Yes.
I don't care if we're talking about compounding interest. I don't care if we're talking about compounding of skills, if we are an athlete, or if you're in sales, whatever it is, stay consistent and it'll compound on top of each other.
And the probabilities bear out. I mean, it's really understanding probability theory. And the more events there are, the greater the odds are that it works out as it's supposed to.
It's really simple.
It is, but people don't understand that. But let's go back to selling for a minute because, let's face it, a lot of people don't like buying cars. Mm-hmm. The car sales people have a bad reputation of being high pressure.
They do.
You have somehow managed to diffuse that, disarm that. Mm-hmm. How do you do that with your people? What is it you tell them? How do you train them to get them to provide, let's say, a less threatening experience to the buyer?
You've
done it, I know.
You serve first and sell second.
Okay.
But I said both. But I said both. Mm-hmm. Okay. I never lose focus on what the goal is, and it's to sell a car. Mm-hmm. But I need to serve first. And what I mean by serve is I need to meet a customer wherever they're at in their buying process.
Right.
Before I can sell the car, I need to provide the information they need to make a well-informed decision. So that comes through a little bit of discovery. Mm-hmm. And as a sales professional, I'm talking to the customer to figure out what step are they at. Yep. Instead of this shotgun approach.
Yep.
Where can I meet them? Is it that we're now down to payments and we got to figure out which payment fits?
Yep.
Is it we're still trying to decide we're going to a car or a truck? What step of the sale are they at?
Right.
Or they've decided the car, they've watched all the YouTube videos, but they want to see, does it actually equal the review they watched online?
It's the confirmation of what they already think, right?
It really is, but that comes from discovery. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a bunch, but it's really important. If you're in any type of sales out there, you better be a really good listener first.
Yes.
You better ask questions so you can figure out where are you picking up in the sales process, because everybody's different.
Yeah. I've noticed that with you, like, somebody who only seen you on radio and TV mm-hmm. or social media might think, oh, Matt is like a super gregarious talker, but you're not. When you're in that mode, you're very, very quiet. Mm-hmm. I've noticed. And you ask a lot of questions and listen to what people say. And now you come and talk to my students every semester, and it's always great. But what is that? Tell everybody a little bit about the basic, get them to know you, like you, and trust you formula. Because I think there's just pure genius in that, no matter what you're selling.
You bet. So there's two things there we got to dissect. Is one, the value of the questions and kind of where that came from, and then I'll get mm-hmm. to the know you, like you, trust you. Mm-hmm. And I got to be honest, if I go back to my 20s and even in my young 30s, I wasn't as good as a listener. You know what I mean?
Oh, I wasn't either.
I was just running and gunning. And a lot of people make this mistake is they do the same walk around or the same sales presentation that they did to sell the last item, whether it is vehicle, whatever it may be. That's mm-hmm. farthest from the truth. Mm-hmm. Because now all of a sudden you're putting this new customer in the same category of wants and needs and motive as the previous customer. And that's just not the facts.
Sure.
You have to become a very good listener. We were going over this morning in the sales meeting. Mm-hmm. I said, I treat when I go talk to a customer like I've got a blank sheet of paper. And the only thing on that sheet of paper is the heading that says, how do I sell them a car? Okay? And it's my job to fill this blank sheet out before I start selling. Mm-hmm. See, in our business, we've talked about this in class, but there's over 20,000 moving parts on the vehicle.
Yeah.
20,000.
It's a lot of parts.
How do you decide to go over with a customer? Because we're all in a fast food mentality.
Well, in your business, your customer base is so diverse. Mm-hmm. I mean, not every business is going to have the diversity of customers that you would have. I mean, basically anybody could buy a car, right?
Anybody.
So you've really got to make an effort to figure out what you're dealing with there.
And this crosses over. Selling is selling.
Yeah.
And managing people is managing people. But in the art of selling, you must know your audience and you must meet them whatever stage they're at in the process of buying. That only comes from discovery mm-hmm. by asking questions. So I fill this sheet of paper out and really...
You fill it out mentally or physically?
Mentally in my mind. Okay. So before I go to start doing the walk around the vehicle, the test drive, present figures, I'm going to know at least 2 hot buttons. I need to know the motive. Why are they here? Is it because their families get larger? Their vehicle's almost out of warranty? They've got a boat they got to pull? They're going to drive more, but need better fuel mileage? See, I got to figure out what's that motive. If I don't know the motive, well, what am I doing?
Right.
I'm just selling scared.
Sure.
I love watching Shark Tank.
Man, I do too. I love the show. Whenever I'm out of town, it's what I turn on and watch at night, a Shark Tank.
And more than the products on Shark Tank, mm-hmm. I like the process and studying the pitches. And you can always tell, and for y'all listening, you're now gonna notice this. The people, when they start selling scared, mm-hmm. When it feels like the line's
they
going away.
They start turning off the sharks.
They do. A couple of them say no, and they're like, oh, hang on,
yeah.
we can do that. Once you start selling scared out of desperation, you're done. I mean, you're absolutely done.
No question about it.
People want to buy from people who are confident about their product.
Sure.
Not that are just like trying to give other incentives to give it away.
Yeah.
So you got to listen, and you've got to really double down once you figure out the motive and a couple hot buttons. You know, and in our industry, you're like, well, Matt, what would the hot buttons be? Well, let's talk about this. Is it fuel mileage? Is it appearance? Is it performance? Is it the warranty? Is it the cup holders, the USB ports, tow capacity? Like, what is it? And for you, it's different than me. And if we had 10 more people in the room, they would all say something different.
Yeah, and it may be different based on, I could buy 10 cars from you, and every time I buy one, I got a different need, right?
Absolutely.
So just because the last time around I wanted towing capacity, I may have dumped my RV along the way, and now I don't need that.
You bet. You're in a different state.
Right, exactly.
And but that's so, like, we got to pause here because that's so important and it's so basic, but everybody misses it. They miss it. They try to sell based upon what they like or how they sold the last customer. And that's so far from the truth.
I'm sure that's true, that what they like. I've been guilty of that before.
Yeah. I mean, even in houses, when somebody's looking for a house, what's your hot buttons and my hot buttons are totally different.
Sure.
And what I wanted in a house 15 years ago and then 15 years in the future, that's going to be totally different.
Yes.
Even on the same person. So you have to slow down to speed up.
Right. I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. But now what about the know, like, and trust?
All right. So let's get to the three there. So what you're looking for here is the green light. And until you get the green light, you have no business trying to sell anybody something. Now, somebody won't give you the green light until they answer those questions. You already hit them. Do I know you? Do I like you? And can I trust you? So mentally, every customer will ask those three questions before they feel confident to go forward with you. Do I know who this person is? Okay.
Right.
Do I like them? Meaning, really, can I tolerate them? Not am I going to invite them over for Christmas or whatever else.
Right.
Can I tolerate them through this process? Okay. And then can I trust them? Now, I can't answer the question about trust if I don't know and if I don't like them.
Yeah, so there's an order of operations.
There's an order of operation. So the only way you can mentally get those questions answered is by asking questions and having conversation. And in our business, it's not about the car. It's about the person. How do you get somebody to open up about that? You got to ask questions.
One of the things you said that's just so profound, it's amazing because you can boil stuff down in real simple terms. That's one of the things that's really good about you, and you stay with your themes. But, I think you said it one time, if you just ask people a lot of questions about themselves, they'll think you're a great guy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it's so true.
And it's like a communication hack.
And you also said if you've ever spent any time with somebody who never asks you a question, they're not really fun to hang out with, and you might not like them very much. And that's true. It's like you get together. Like, and my wife would have like a friend, and then, it's like, we need to get together with the friend. You get together with the husband, and all he does is talk about himself the whole time.
I know.
Never even asks anything about you,
Nothing.
like where you grew up, what you do, nothing. Okay.
I think that's so important, and you stole some of my thunder there, but only because we've talked about it so much,
Right.
and it's been relevant through all these years. Is the quickest way to get somebody to answer that question of, do I know you and do I like you, is by you asking them questions to talk. And like you said, we've all been in those situations where if that person talked the whole time, you're like, man, I don't know anything about, they didn't ask anything about me. I'm done. Let's not go out to dinner with them again.
Yeah.
So you need to ask questions about, I'll ask questions like, hey, do y'all live here in Fayetteville?
Yeah.
I don't know if they live in Fayetteville or not. The answer is either yes or no. And they'll be
Sure.
like, no, we don't. Well, where do you live? Yeah. Well, we live up in Bentonville. Perfect. Do your kids go to school in Bentonville? Well, I don't know if they have kids or not, but I'm getting ready to find out. And they're like, no, they don't go to Bentonville. Which school do they go to? Well, they actually go over in Rogers. What grades are they in? So I just keep asking these questions to get to know them, because two things there. One, they get to start answering the question of, I kind of like this guy. He's interested in my wants and needs. And then two, when I get ready to do my sales presentation, I'm incorporating in their daily commute.
Sure.
I'm incorporating in taking the kids to school wherever they're going.
Right.
So it's a twofold.
Sure.
I want them to walk away and go, you know what? Matt really asked questions and he really got to know me.
Yeah.
So check one.
Right.
You know?
So now we know you.
Well, we know you. We like you because we at least engaged.
Yes.
So then they can go forward. And in our business, purchasing a vehicle is usually the second largest purchase they'll make. So they better at least trust me handling the money and figuring out the monthly payment, so on and so forth. That one stuck with me. I was working for a trainer out of Chattanooga, Tennessee as an internship when I was in college. And he taught me those things. He goes, they got to know you, like you, and trust you before they'll do business with you.
You had very specialized training. I mean, you're fourth generation in this family business, but you've really turned it on its ear. I mean, let's be honest, and transformed it completely. But you went to a special 4-year college for automotive professionals.
I did.
And then had other internships that were related. That's pretty unusual, isn't it?
It is.
Do you think the other people, I'm sure some of them you still know.
I do.
Do they do things like you do, or did they throw all that out of that education out the door and then go back to do things the way their parents did in the old days? I'm just curious.
Some do, some don't. You hit on an important fact there. There's another part to the equation is you can get all the education you want, but if the team you're around does not embrace knowing that, like, hey, we need to be progressive, we need to relook at this. And in our case, just because we've done something since 1946 doesn't mean that that's what we need to do going forward.
Yes.
We have to remember that the one funding payroll is the customer. And I tell my employees that all the time. I'm like, your check may say Lewis, but it's funded from the customer. All right. And if the customer's way to buy a car, service a car changes, we need to change too.
Yes.
So that one's, I don't want to miss that. Yes, I went to a lot of great training and education, but if I wouldn't have had the support of my dad and my uncle of going, okay, let's see what this looks like now. Let's see what the buying process looks, then I would have hit a dead end. And some of my friends have hit that.
Yeah, maybe their parents or their other family members aren't as open-minded as yours were.
Or they're still in the store trying to micromanage it.
Yeah.
You know, I've got some friends in their 40s, and they've now been back.
They can't get the parents out of the way.
They can't. You know, they'll try to be progressive.
I've seen that before. It's very demotivational for them.
Well, then they just stop. You know, I've got some friends, and they keep, and they'll have a great meeting about a new process. And, you know, then their parents or their dad or their mom, whoever's in the business, they go back and have another meeting like, no, we're not going to do it this way. I'll talk to so-and-so about it.
Yeah.
And like you said, after that happens a couple times, then they just stop, which is so bad.
I mean, you came into this at a young age. I met you right when you first came into the business, and I'd had not a great experience at one of your stores. And I told you about it. It wasn't a huge deal. I don't remember what it was. It was something silly about, I bought a car and they didn't want me to leave it there more than 2 or 3 days. They insisted I get it.
Okay.
I was out of town, but I didn't want to lose the car, so I bought it, and then we were gone. You know, but anyway, it all worked out in the end. But they kind of made us think about it, and I told you about that. And ever since then, you and I have done a lot of business. But so.
Hey, hang on, but you bring up a point there.
Okay.
Is usually it's something small like that. So everybody listening is like, what? It was just because you couldn't leave the car for a couple of days? If you peel back the layers of the onion, usually the reason a customer leaves and goes and does business somewhere else is something small.
Yeah.
It's really easy. That monetary-wise, it wasn't, hey, you missed me by a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
It was like you just didn't listen to my needs and how I needed you to help facilitate it.
Well, you know, that's another thing, though, that I know you've always brought up, and you've said that really price is not the determining factor. Now, you're in a mature industry. Sure, it's got its growth periods and its decline periods, and there's a zillion auto dealers out there. You said it before, all 4 dealers pay the same price for the same F-150. So, yeah, and you can get online, and anybody can shop and find the lowest price, right? But yet you still manage to do the business that you do, and it's not all price driven in the end. Talk a little bit about that.
So we have to be competitive.
Yeah.
You know, so we've got all these whiz-bang tools to make sure we're competitively priced in the market. But we don't have to have a race to the bottom. See, people they don't mind paying a profit. They want you to be competitive.
Sure,
but
if
they
you're
want
my
the
friend,
service.
I want you to be successful.
Exactly.
I don't begrudge you making a living on me. You know what I mean?
That's so true.
No, like and trust, okay? I don't expect to go to you and every time for you just did not make any money with me. That's a totally unrealistic expectation.
It really is.
But I've had businesses myself. I'm not sure everybody thinks like that about their friends or, you know.
I would agree. I've seen some people talk about that of like, hey, if anybody to pay you a profit, it should be your friends. They want you to be successful.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we are in a competitive, mature business, that we add value. And somebody says like, okay, they're $500 more than somebody down the road, but here's what I'm gaining.
They know they're going to take care of me.
I know that they're not going to sell. They're not building their business up to sell it in 3 or 4 years. And if I have an issue down the road, I'm going to find familiar faces there because they take good care of them.
Yep.
You know, if there's a gray area, more than likely they're going to give me the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. Like I know. So I bought an F-250 from you, and the next day I had like a power steering hose go bad or something on it. You remember that?
I remember it.
And boy, your brother and somebody else came immediately. Within like 5 minutes of where I had my problem. And all I could think is, if I had bought that from any other Ford dealer around there, you think they would have cared to do that?
No, it would have been, you get in line. Let's see when we get you scheduled.
Yeah, we'll
next
see
month.
see if we can get a tow truck to bring you over back to the dealership. And, you know, maybe we'll give you a loaner when you do or not.
I think that's the value of, you know, from a consumer, you got to look at the entire cycle.
Right.
You know, for us, it's not just buying the car, but it's like, hey, I got to look forward of when I'm getting in maintenance or I need help with this or that. Because if we have 2 customers come in and we only have 1 loaner vehicle left, the priority is going to go to the one that's purchased from us.
Of course, it has to.
You know, like you said, it has to. That's an additional benefit.
Well, the other, I always think about, like, if when I go to get rid of it, I go to you guys as the first place I go, because you've got that policy where you give people a price whether they buy a car or not. I think that is like a huge credibility, honesty, trust building.
I think that's a shift in the industry. You and I have talked about it for a few years.
Yeah,
but that's
more
also,
of them doing that now?
You're seeing a little bit more, you know, because you've got some online stuff. You know, you've got some Carvana and was Vroom and, you know, Carvana.
They're struggling, though, aren't they?
They are. They are. But so people can get liquid amounts and transparent for their vehicle. And when we started to scale our purchasing off the road, we said we've got to look at a whole different model. How do we give people the most money from the get-go, whether they trade with us or they don't? Do we want them to trade with us? Yes, we do.
Sure.
But we want to be
because you need stuff to sell.
We need stuff to sell.
Yeah, right.
So no matter if they buy or they don't buy, here's the amount for your vehicle. And it's none of these funny games of like, well, you got to stay on that vehicle to get that much.
Yeah, as soon as that happens, the trust goes, then you don't know what you're really paying. It all becomes a mystery.
Even if you do go forward with that transaction, because I had a one-off vehicle, you remember that as a customer.
Right.
When you're telling everybody else about your experience and when you think about the next vehicle you're going to buy. One of the things we talk about with our crew, and then I talk about with customers too, my goal is not just to sell you a car today. In fact, it doesn't do me any good if I just sell you a car today.
Sure.
My goal is to sell you your next 5 or 6 vehicles and all your neighbors and everybody else.
Yeah, it's the lifetime value of the customer.
It really is.
Their network is what you're really, that's why the experience is so crucial, right? Because it blow it at any step along the way and the whole stream goes away.
It does. It does. And it usually doesn't happen overnight. You look up a few years later, it's like, well, what's happened? Why do we have this downhill trend? And if we look back to those experiences, they just slowly start chipping away at your market share.
It was funny the other day at your open house, Shelby's like, well, nobody likes buying a car. And then he says, except for Mark Zweig. You know, because it's fun. It is. What do you mean nobody likes buying a car? You know, nothing's more fun than that. You get a new car. It's clean. It's beautiful. It's fun to learn about it and experience it. I love buying cars. That new dealership is so exciting over there. It's like I keep looking at your inventory to see if there's anything I want to buy.
Just to be a part of it.
Yeah, just because it's so cool, you know. But let's go back to that for a minute. Let's zoom out because as a business owner, you have just made a commitment to radically increase your overhead. Not just in terms of the facility cost, which I'm sure is 2 or 3 times or more whatever it used to be at your old location, because you've been there for 50 plus years, but you also have to invest in more inventory in that place. So you have really stepped up in terms of your overhead. What's that like? What is that? How does that make you feel? What motivated you to do that?
When we looked at it on where our business was there on college, we were really comfortable there.
Sure.
We had the processes efficient. We had margins where we needed them to be. The sustainability was there. But you have to look farther down the road, you know, and
well, not everybody does. Some people just say, this is great. I'll just stay here and keep my overhead low as possible and make money.
Which sounds enticing.
What's wrong with that?
But when you start looking of, okay, our area is 600,000 people. We're going to 1 million people. What does that look like for us long-term wise? Is our position correct? And we knew that the position was not correct. But it's uncomfortable, you know, because like you said, our fixed expenses are way up. Are way up.
How long do you think it's going to take before you get your volume to where it needs to be in that?
Right now, we're on an 18-month plan for that, and I've got it split up in thirds, you know, the first 6, 12, and then 18. Some of those areas will progress quicker, and some won't. But on 18 months, we feel like we can get it to the capacity close to where we built it for.
I see.
And the expense is definitely there. So that puts us in an uncomfortable state, which is good at times. You know, to get uncomfortable every once in a while, that's when you got to kind of get backed into a corner and go, okay, what does our marketing look like? You get to look at the whole business again. Where do we need to scale? Where do we need to cut back? How do we get more people in service? How do we market more of these vehicles? We're now on 26 acres and 150,000 square feet. So we've got the facilities. Okay, we've gone from 170 to 237 employees. We've scaled the employees. Both of those are expense items unless they're generating revenue. So then I was telling you before this, we just brought on a new marketing director. Okay, we got the facilities, we got the employees. Now we got to let everybody know about this, and we got to drive the traffic to us. So it's, in a sense, it's like almost opening a new business. Because you're going to a whole new scale. And you're starting going, what do we need to do now to generate the revenue in the business for that?
Do you wake up at night in a sweat and go, oh my God, what did we do? I mean, we've got to do so much business with this thing in order to make this thing pay off. Not also just the move. You had to have like some disruption. Just, you know, just being able to get out of the one place and get over to the other one. There's a lag there.
We did.
You know?
We did. So 2 things. Yes, I do wake up in the middle of the night. But I've been doing that for a while because we were trying to get the construction done at the same time.
So that was waking you up at night.
So, you know, while running the automotive group, I was also doing the construction. So the amount of time that took. So both of those pieces.
That's a big distraction in itself, just going through a project like that, isn't it?
It is. It is. And
takes you out of operations.
A lot of people will just set to the side and let the planes be built as they're built. We micromanaged a lot of that, which took some time, but it equals a great customer experience. I mean, the flow inside is just phenomenal. And like you said, it's a joy to do business there now. So when you walk in, you're
so
like,
bright and light and pretty and
used to feeling like this is actually fun.
I even saw a Ford Edge, or I think it was an Edge on your showroom floor. It was a blue one that was out there the day of the open house. Look, I've never been a big fan of the Ford Edge. I'll be honest with you, Matt. But that car sitting there in that showroom with that light on it and that beautiful blue color, I looked at that. I said, you know what? That thing looks really cool. Can I see myself driving that? You know what I mean? It gave me a whole new sort of perspective
on it.
On the car. I know. Just sitting in that place.
I know.
That's fantastic.
It really is. And a lot of people have asked us, like, where were all these cars? Well, they were across town. We just jammed 26 acres worth of stuff on 10 acres.
Yeah, it's really nice when you have all them laid out where you can see all of the one thing in one location, too, because I was walking around the lot and I noticed that. It's very nicely arranged now.
Starting with when you pull in. When you pull in, the curb's raised up and there's 6 display pads on each side.
Yeah.
So we have 6 Fords and 6 CDJR. Every time you pull in, so every person that comes in, I get to market to them the vehicles I want. They're on an angle, they're on a raised pad.
Yeah, you got the trucks on. Yeah, that's so cool.
On the rocks up there.
Yeah, right. Hey, tell everybody though, CGDR, I don't think everybody understands what that is.
So Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram on the one side, Ford on the other side. Let's go back to the move and the downtime, because I do want to talk to business owners about this. It took us a little over a week to like fully move. Now, behind the scenes, we'd been working on that for a month, getting the shelving right, so on and so forth. When we looked at that downtime of a week, we said we can hire a moving company to help us, and everybody can just have extra PTO time.
Right.
Or let's look at the amount we were going to spend there, and why don't I offer to my employees, let's just guarantee their pay based upon their last 90 days worth of average pay, and they can help us move.
That's progressive.
So 2 things. Number one, it was way more expensive to do it that way than hire a moving company. Mm-hmm. You can imagine.
Sure.
Because I took everybody at every different pay level.
They're not all $20 an hour physical movers, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, managers, salespeople, 90-day average, and then I guaranteed that per day on pay. Mm-hmm. And they helped us move. So then they had a part, an invested interest on moving the stuff over. They got
ownership.
Paid. They have more ownership.
Yes.
They're excited. Right in the middle of the move on a Sunday afternoon, when everybody had gotten out of church, we said, today is a family day. Mm-hmm. Bring your family out, show your whole family around. It was almost like a soft opening in the restaurant business. Mm-hmm. So we brought them all by, showed the lifts up and down, behind the scenes. So it was cool to see employees. I wasn't giving tours at that point in time. The employees were. Yeah. Because they had already been in the facility and set the stuff up.
I think that's very smart to do it like that.
I'll tell you a goal of ours with the grand opening, and you were there. Man, we were blessed with a lot of people.
Oh, you were.
It was. Last Friday, we had 1,000 people there.
I'm not surprised at all.
Cuttings.
Yeah.
Saturday was another 600 or 700. Mm-hmm. And I told my managers when we started early in the week, I said, I at least want a dozen tour guides at each dealership. Mm-hmm. See, here was an opportunity we had, and we could either step up and accomplish what I'm getting ready to talk about, or we just did the normal everybody else did and had the cake and woohoo and cut the ribbon, and then they moved on. I said, we have an opportunity. In our case, we didn't know how many people were going to be there. We had 1,600 to 1,700 people, and I had one goal, is that we walked them around and we showed them the entire dealership like they were a VIP. In the back on parts room, upstairs.
Here's the showers for the mechanics.
For the mechanics.
The gym and the yoga rooms, right?
All of it. The outdoor patios, the manager offices. And why did I do that? Because I wanted them to walk away from that grand opening to be a walking, talking billboard for Lewis. Mm-hmm. That's as basic as you can get in marketing, is word of mouth.
Yeah, but it's not word of mouth just because you didn't do anything. A lot of times people say word of mouth. It's like, we don't believe in advertising. We believe in word of mouth. I'm like, but they got to get there in the first place to give you the word of mouth, right? So what drives them there in the first place? But yeah, so you actually had something to talk about.
We did.
And I think that's very smart to do it like that. I was also thinking after that first day of that, I thought, gosh, I bet Matt and his brothers are like, oh my God, we got to do this a second day. Oh, I was exhausted after that first day. And now I got to go out there again. And do this a second day.
It was definitely exhausting. And you need to remember, if you're a leader or a manager or a business owner out there, that your employees do feel that. Mm-hmm. So it's important to have quick rallies. So Saturday morning, we rallied up and we said, guys, we had a little over 1,000 people yesterday. Mm-hmm. We had 24 tour guides.
We got selling cars.
We sold a few cars.
I wondered if like, how could they, if people got so excited, they just wanted to buy a car right then and there.
You bring up a good point on what I was focused on. So no different than when we talked about spiffs just a little bit earlier about the activities.
Right.
I wasn't focused on selling cars. Now, if we sold cars, great byproduct.
Sure. Yeah, right.
But what I was focused on is if I could take 1,600 people and equip them to be out there every single day, organically talking about their experience.
Telling 20 people,
Telling
32,000 now, and some of them are going to buy cars, right?
And then we'll look back 6 to 12 months later and be like, what catapulted that? Was it the billboard? Was it the social media post?
Right.
No, it was the organic growth of having all those people tell 20, 30 people they ran into.
Yeah, there's safety in those kind of numbers. The odds will bear out.
You know it will. And you might not see it right now, but again, it's managing activities that equal the results.
Why do you think so many small business owners are such lousy marketers? Because, I have my students work with a small business every semester, the small enterprise students in the consulting project. And Matt, if I told you like this semester, I probably saw 50 or 60 companies.
Okay.
If 3 of them were actually marketing themselves effectively, I'd be surprised. Why do you think they don't do it? It blows me away. It's like, this is your opportunity and you're not doing it. What is that?
They overcomplicate it. They overcomplicate it, and all their media sources are not beaten to the same drum.
Okay.
So a lot of times people will try to give too much information, whether it's in a radio ad or it's a post.
Yes, attention spans are short. They're
so
overloaded with messages.
And most of the time they talk about what they want to talk about. Really telling you about selling, you got to ask the questions.
Yep.
We got to figure out what is the motive that people are buying. And that's what the value proposition needs to be that's out there. It needs to be the same on the billboard, on social media, on your Google paid ads, on your radio, and then in the store.
Consistency of messaging throughout the whole thing.
We talk about it as a 360-degree marketing approach. The last thing you want to do is spend thousands of dollars to have somebody come in the store and ask one of your reps about the sale or whatever the offer was, and them not to know what you're talking about. It's like getting up to the plate in baseball and not swinging the bat.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect pitch.
Sure.
You've got to have everybody on the same page, and it's got to be a simple message that goes 360 degrees around. All media sources are relevant.
Right.
And this is a newsflash to some of y'all, especially if we go back about 10 years when we're like, hey, the internet, you won't have any other advertising. That's not the truth.
Oh, sure.
That's not the truth. Because in a world where you can DVR stuff and stuff's on demand,
right,
then the more the static stuff comes relevant. So like my static billboards, they can't turn them off.
Yep.
The only way you can't see them driving up and down the road is if you're not looking at the road.
Billboards are actually more effective than a lot of small business owners know. Billboard advertising. It's interesting you say that. But you've got different types of customers. They use different types of media.
We do.
Like old people sit around and watch the local news at night.
do.
Young people never see it. You know what I mean?
And that's okay as long as you understand that.
Yeah, you got to understand that. There's different places where these customers are going to be.
So you brought up TV. My TV advertisement is only during the news. Then with some filtered in there. Because I know I have more of a captive audience.
Sure.
And they're less likely to DVR the news.
Right, because it's current information. Yeah.
And then the billboard is really branding. It's not cost effective, and it's really hard to read if I tried to change like 0% and amounts off. It is just branding to make the TV advertising or the social media post more sticky.
That makes sense. So they're familiar with it. So then it's familiarity brings...
They already know you.
Yes.
So it goes the same thing.
Reduces the risk.
It really does. It's like, you know what? I know those guys. Maybe we should listen to that.
But I always like to use the example of Sam's Furniture because I think in our area, they understood the kind of marketing that you have done, and they stay on message. They had certain things that they hammered away on. You can buy it and get it the same day delivery. That was a big thing that they hammered on. Our inventory is sitting here on the floor. You're not going to wait weeks for it. But, it becomes instead the response is like subconscious. to that. My wife, ex-wife, had a friend that bought a new house, 5 bedrooms, and she's a physician, and she wanted to get all new bedding for it. She goes, Brooke needs, 5 bedrooms worth of mattresses and box springs. Where do you think she ought to go? And I'm like, get it at Sam's, because she needs it tomorrow. That same day delivery. You know what I mean? It's like that, and I think you've employed that same strategy now as well, very effectively. And then you eat into the market share of the other people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these small business owners are sitting around blaming their woes, like, well, the car business sucks, and everybody bought a new car during COVID, and now they're not buying cars. Or everybody bought a new RV, and now, RV sales are off by 50% or whatever. And yet there are still individual businesses in those markets that do well.
There is.
Okay? They do well. They do it by eating into the share of the other people who are not doing what they need to do, though.
It's a mindset. It's one, I do agree with you. Sam's Furniture does a fantastic job on marketing and staying consistent.
Yes, they do.
Staying consistent. Mm-hmm. I had a guy teach me back in the radio days about saying the same message over and over and over. He's like, Matt, you have a new audience every single break.
And people think, well, I said that once, everybody got it. No, they didn't all get it. Even if they heard it, they didn't all get it. They're not paying attention at that moment.
Get it. And it took a while for that to click. I'm sitting over there writing new ad copy, and this DJ looks over and he's like, Matt, what are you doing? I'm like, I got to get some fresh content. We're going to stay on it. And he said, you have a whole new audience. We're going to say exactly what we said last time, and then we're going to say it again. Because when you're first in business and when you first start doing marketing, you think everybody retains 100% of everything you said, and that's so far from the truth.
It's so true. But most business owners don't understand that. That's why it takes that sustained, disciplined marketing activity for extended periods of time. And it's like, well, we tried that once. It didn't work. I mean, how many times have you heard stuff like that?
A long time. And you never know, just like your story, when it's going to pop up that you can tell somebody, hey, if you need to go get bedding or mattresses or whatever, you said, get it at Sam's, same-day delivery.
Yeah.
Well, it's because that had been ingrained into you. That had been marketed 10 years before then.
Exactly.
No different than me telling you about all these tour guides and giving those 1,600 people a tour. Everybody that walks in, we're like, hey, can we give you a tour? One, we're proud of it.
Sure.
But then two, we know that
interesting.
Even if we don't sell them a car, that we equip them to be a walking, talking billboard for us. We want raving fans. Raving fans. Let's go back to one of the pieces you talked about in a declining industry.
Yeah.
No matter the market, if it goes down. There's two trains of thought. One, you either start blaming everybody else and you play the blame game.
Try to cut your costs as fast as you can. Very difficult to do successfully.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Very difficult. Especially if you're in a business that has peaks and valleys pretty rapidly.
Right.
Because usually the expense you cut, you need it back when you get back up. Instead, why don't we look at it, let's just take a larger market share.
Yeah.
We went over this in your class when I drew the pies up and the pieces of the pie. I said, if we're going in a downturn, I'll recognize that as a business owner. But when it comes time for me to put my sales hat on for my team to go out there and sell, I just said, here's how we're going to take market share from everybody else.
Yes.
And we'll at least stay the same, if not improve, when everybody else declined.
Yep. And you've done that.
It's a different mindset. It's as simple as looking at something differently.
Yes.
No different than managing activities instead of results.
So much of it is mental. It's like, at the same time, back on selling, I was always taught, like, you don't need any one sale. If you think you need that sale, you may want that sale, but you don't need it. If they're not going to be the one, somebody else is going to be.
That's right.
You've got to have that mentality. If that one doesn't work out, somebody else is going to come through the door, and the next one is.
That's so important.
That it's a psychological game,
The quicker you understand that there's an equation to it, the better off you are.
I know it. But that takes professional sales management and training.
It does.
To get that message across. One of my daughters is 33 years old. She just had our second grandchild here last week.
Congratulations.
But she went, she's a classic kid, had, 4 majors, took 7 years to get her undergrad degree. She has worked in every job you can imagine when she was young, from restaurant hostess to dental assistant to, I was at a party last weekend and met a guy and he's like, oh, your daughter used to work for me. He's a child's dentist. To bartender, to phlebotomist, to perfusion assistant. Then she got her degree in child development and she got into physician recruiting.
Okay.
Because a friend of hers she went to Fayetteville High with moved to Dallas and was making $120,000 a year, like a year out of college. And she goes, I'm going to go to work there and, start out at like 40,000, whatever, 42. She goes, what do you think about that? And I said, well, most people don't make it. It's a very hard business. However, the training you will get will be invaluable to you. Yeah. And if you do succeed, you'll make a lot of money. Okay. And she succeeded at it. And you know why? She's like, I just did what they told me to do. Nobody else did. All these other people are hired. She went to work for that firm. They all fall. They either quit or get fired over the next 2 or 3 years. I just did what they told me to do.
Oh, that's so true.
And then it works out. And now,
so true.
In
any business, the statement and story you just walked through is familiar in any business. So many people, when they get into a career, all they need to do is what they tell them to do. But what happens, you're like, well, man, that sounds simple. Let me tell you what happens.
Or I don't want to do that.
They don't protect who's pouring into them. And everybody's heard this. Show me the 5 closest people around you, and I'll show you how successful you're going to be.
Sure.
If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. We've all heard those things.
And it's true. I mean, I buy all that. I like to hang out with other people that I feel like I get inspired by or motivated by versus those that suck me down. I mean,
no, I agree. I agree.
There's enough negative stuff out there. Let's face it.
So that person starts up and we give them the tools they need and they might be successful for a month or 2 months. But then they start hanging out and they let people start talking in their ear. They're below average. Yeah. That below average person, they're going to keep talking in their ear because they want to drag them down to bring the average down to make them feel better. Didn't help their compensation. Just mentally help them.
Yeah.
So it's really important that they get the correct people pouring into their life. In our business, we say, don't go hang out with 5-car Fred. And it's really that. If somebody's just selling 5 cars, don't be taking advice from them.
And it's your job, though, as manager to move the 5-car Freds out, isn't it? I mean, you can't tolerate them because they're a cancer.
They are.
Really, they drag everybody down. But where do you think like a typical small business owner gets that? They're out there on their own. Mm-hmm. And, it's something the other day I said something about a business I work with. My wife's like, well, I'm sure they're thrilled that, you help with that or whatever. I said, look, I don't really get any credit for that. And I don't care. I don't need it. I've been out there on my own for so long. I'm used to not getting any credit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of small business owners suffer from that. They don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have anybody to inspire them. They don't have anybody to say that was good. They may get plenty of people taking pot shots at them.
Oh, for sure.
For all the mistakes that they make, which we all do. Mm-hmm. But how do you get that? I mean, yourself as a business owner.
That's a great question. And I think in today's day and age, it's easier than it's ever been before. Okay. And here's why I say that. You can go on Google or whatever browser you use and type in a subject.
Yeah.
And ask for podcasts, just like we're doing right now, on a subject. I did the same thing when I was going through construction. I wasn't a construction expert, but I had this massive project in front of me. Yeah. But I can find people out there that are industry experts that might have 20, 30 years of experience, and I can listen and study that to catapult myself there. The majority of small business, let me tell you what happens here, because I've been there, is you're wearing all the hats.
Right.
You're the advertising person, your HR, your payroll, you're the inspector, your QC, you're in charge of hiring, firing, motivated, you're the janitor,
The bill collector.
you're all of it.
Sure.
So what I encourage people to do, and this sounds crazy, but you'll get a multiplier here, you got to step back.
Yeah.
You got to step back. Whatever it is, you need to step back, and even if it's just for an afternoon, free of distractions, put a podcast on and start listening. Don't do it in your business. If you want to go on a hike, if you want to go out to the lake, whatever,
because you'll be interrupted otherwise.
You'll be
right?
interrupted.
Right.
Plus, all this stuff surrounds you, and you're thinking about, what do I got to do next? You've got some of my most valuable time is if I step back and I get around those people. So start off by looking at podcasts. There's plenty of books out there.
Yeah.
But you're like, Matt, I'd love to read books, but I'm too busy doing this and that. Well, listen to podcasts in your ears while you're doing it.
Sure.
Okay? While you're driving. And then get around people in the community. You know, I know the different chambers, they have professionals night outs.
Yeah.
They have different stuff at different places. Get out there and start networking, and you can tell pretty quick, who do I want to hang out with that can pour success and be a good sounding board for me, and who should I not?
Yeah, no question. Well, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about because we're running out of time.
Okay.
Your family, and you've carried this tradition on, has always been very active in the community and does a lot of stuff to give back. I mean, I don't know where you find the time to do everything that you do, but how important do you think that is for a small business owner?
I think it's extremely important. And here's why. Because the entire circle of doing business and economics comes into play here.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that it's the right thing to do, is if you support people locally who do business with you, that's another reason they'll come do business with you again, even if you're not the cheapest in town.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, remember when we needed that T-ball sponsorship? Remember when your aunt, who's a school teacher, didn't have supplies and she filled out a wish list and Lewis Automotive shipped it all directly to her?
Yep.
You know, remember when this happened or
All
that
those
happened?
positive interactions and help, huh?
And it
makes a difference.
It's very hard to quantify when you're doing it.
Right.
It's no different than the billboard driving down the road.
Yeah.
But all these pieces add up. And maybe you're a small business out there and you're like, well, man, I can't do a $5,000 or $10,000 donation or sponsorship. Yeah, but there is other levels you can do. You could start off by volunteering places.
Right.
And
you
wear all
guys
your
do
swag.
that too. I've seen you. Yeah.
We won't hardly sponsor something if we can't be there to volunteer as well. And here's a little marketing hack for you. So if you're looking to sponsor something and you're like, it's $5,000 to be the presenting sponsor, like, that's just not in our budget. See what they have for $300, $400, $500 and then show up there with a crew to help with your shirts on. You'll get more exposure.
Yeah, that's a good advice. I like that.
You really will. So when you start looking at those grassroots, then organically people think of you. When it comes to automotive, serve first, sell second. So we're out there in the community serving,
Yes.
planting those seeds, the brand awareness. So when the time comes to sell, there's no question in anybody's mind.
Right.
They'll at least give us an opportunity.
Well, I think, this whole idea that people buy on more than price, it's, as a business owner, and you said it yourself, I mean, I hardly buy anything based on price in any of the businesses that I'm in. I deal with the people I want to deal with that I think are going to be there for me when I need them. So, I've been in the construction business, the consulting business, the media business, the motorcycle manufacturing, baby products, whatever. The price doesn't drive it. It's the relationship with the people.
It is.
And I've had if I have long-term relationships, if something goes wrong with their product, or service, they're going to try to make it right because they don't want to lose that.
That's right.
That's
right. That's right.
And the consistency, I mean, if it's just because it's the cheapest, but then you have quality problems or you have delivery problems that screws up your whole business, how can you afford that?
You can't. You can't. And not only was your margin razor thin, the CSI and the experience was really low. So both of those are just a disaster for only equaling a short-term business.
Yes.
You need to be in the long-term game.
Small businesses need to understand that things aren't as price sensitive as they think.
It's not.
Because this is what I run into with all my students, okay? Again, I'll go back to their consulting projects.
Sure.
Half of them will come back with some sort of a discounting or coupon scheme as their marketing idea for the business. Okay. And I'm like, you guys got to stop relying on that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it. I don't want to see coupons or punch cards at Theo's or Bordino's.
Wherever.
You know, I'm not going to go take my wife out on a nice dinner date and say, hey, would you punch my card? You know what I mean? It's the wrong place for that. It doesn't.
Really is.
These things, not everything is price driven.
So let's look at the experience instead. Let's be competitive. Let's look at the experience. This is fresh on my mind because we just got done developing it. But in services is the oil change. And we said, okay, we need to decrease the time it takes to do an oil change. But I'm not after a 20-minute oil change.
Right.
I'm just not.
Okay.
The goal is to be less than an hour, but let's provide a better experience and a higher value.
Sure.
So we said, all right, the goal is to be less than an hour. Let's have no appointment necessary so anybody can pull up and get it. Let's give them a complimentary alignment check. So as soon as you pull in through the bay, it shows up on the screen.
Right.
Is the vehicle in or out of alignment?
Yeah.
And then let's offer them a complimentary car wash.
Oh, see, that makes it a lot nicer, right?
So the customer's sitting there thinking, they're like, I could have gone down the road to some sort of quick service place.
Yeah.
And it might have been faster, but this is still pretty quick. You know, within an hour, I'm good with. Plus, I know if my car's in or out of alignment.
Right.
I know I got quality products going in.
Probably got a nicer waiting room than they'll ever have, right?
For sure, nicer waiting room and experience. And then my car's washed, too. So instead of saying...
Give more value.
Give more value.
Yeah, instead of just cheapest price and cutting everything out that you can in order to make it so you can survive at the low price, right?
There's a different approach.
Yeah.
There's a different approach.
It's just small business. There's always going to be somebody who's cheaper than you.
There is. But I do want to encourage all small business owners out there. If you don't take time to get around others that can help brainstorm with you and invest in yourself first, there's no way your business will grow. You know, Craig Rochelle said this. He said, everybody gets better when the leader gets better.
Yeah.
So you have to focus. And I know you're busy. Trust me, I'm there.
No,
okay?
gosh, yeah. Nobody's busier than this guy. You got 3 young kids. This
it's
huge
crazy
business. Yeah, that's open all the time. Yeah.
But you have to take time, even if it's just an afternoon and you go on a hike in the woods or you go sit at a picnic table at a park. It cannot be your business. Put in a podcast. You're like, Matt, I don't even know where to start. Go in Google. Type in top podcast for leadership, top podcast for handling HR. Whatever season you're in, and then get a hold of the chamber and look for those professional nights out and go to other people's grand openings. You can find pockets of time. You might not have a week to go to a whole week-long seminar somewhere, but you can find these pockets, and your business will benefit greatly from it.
Well, you got to be, it's a cliche, but be a lifelong learner.
You do.
Is basically what you're saying. You're never done. I mean, you've got to keep going. The world is changing at a rapid pace.
We'll be doing something different next year.
Yeah.
You know, and there will be different sources of advertising.
Sure.
And that's the thing people need to understand too. And I know we're getting close on time, but is advertising hasn't changed. The sources have changed.
Yeah, the media's changed, but the basic
way
psychology
that somebody
of it all
works from a consumer, especially in a large ticket item, you know, a consumer in back in the day would look at the newspaper, see the ad, and they'd either call or they'd come down to the dealership. Now they see it on our website. They either send in the lead, they call, or they come directly to the dealership.
Yep.
It's just a different source.
Yep.
Consistency is the biggest thing in all of this, though.
Yep.
It's being consistent and managing daily activities. And when you interact with your customer, getting them to know you, like you, and trust you first.
Fundamentals. Eric and I were talking about this last week. It's just the discipline that any business owner needs to take. Discipline is so critical.
It is.
It's lacking in the majority of companies, I'm afraid to say, because the people that run them aren't disciplined.
The good news for y'all that do want to be consistent and disciplined, it's easier to win.
It is.
You know,
make the odds stacked in your favor.
That's so good.
You know,
I know.
Anyway, well, listen, I could talk to Matt all day, obviously. The guy's got so much to offer, and I've been so impressed watching the success of Matt and Lewis Automotive Group over the last 20 years. It's really been a great learning experience for me, and having him in my classes, and love buying vehicles over there. I got to stop because I got to slow down, Matt. I can't do it like I used to. But anyway, so if anybody wants to reach you, Matt, what's the best way?
You bet. Well, when we first tell you our location, in case you haven't seen it, it's on I-49, exit 65 in Fayetteville. Come by for a complimentary tour. We'll give you a free car wash while we're giving you the tour. If you want to find us, our website's lewisautomotivegroup.com. And then no matter what social source you're on, you can find Lewis Ford or Lewis CDJR on any of those. If they want to contact me directly, whether you come by the store or you can find me on Facebook, it's under Matt Lewis, or Instagram, either way.
Great. I think you're also on LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn as well. That's right. Yeah.
So follow Matt on LinkedIn as well.
Anything I can ever help with, if there's business owners out there that want to come through, and I'm more than happy to help them. I've had tons of people help me along the way, and so my duty is to be able to reciprocate that.
Well, you've always given back so generously, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, this has been another episode of Big Talk About Small Business, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Big Talk About Small Business. If you have any questions or ideas for upcoming shows, be sure to head over to our website, www.bigtalkaboutsmallbusiness.com, and click on the Ask the Host button for the chance to have your questions answered on the show. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn at Big Talk About Small Business. And be sure to head over to our website to read articles, browse episodes, and ask questions about upcoming shows.